Assalamu alaikum. In this topic, we are going to explore about user interfaces. So this is topic number 2. Okay. So topic number 2, understanding user interface. All right. Types of operating system, user interface. So what is a user interface? User interface is a program or set of programs that sits as a layer above the operating system itself to create computational structures and access the resources. Sometimes the program is known as shell. Okay, so we can say that it is a UI or user interface, or it is actually a shell. It provides a mechanism for user to communicate with the operating system and request operating system services. So before this, we have learned that operating system is actually in the middle, between software and hardware. Okay, so the middle is the operating software. Okay, but how the application or software communicate to use the hardware is by using the user interface. Okay, so you as a user will actually communicate with the operating system, normally using your application. So you need to have user interface so that you can understand and you can provide the correct instruction to the operating system so that your computation or your computing task would be smooth. Right? That is the meaning of having user interface. Alright? So again, because the operating system is responsible to monitor all the resources and to allow or disallow the use of the resources. So software, other software or other application cannot go through the operating system without any permission. So this is why we need to have the user interface. So in operating system, normally we will have two types of interface design. Number one is a command line interface. Okay, and then the second one is the one that we are familiar with or use this a lot, which is the graphical user interface. Right? So the first one is what we call as the command line interface, or actually is based on text only. All right, but the second one is more with graphics, with some design elements, or with icons or pictures or whatsoever. Right? So that is the component of interface design. So here, as you can see in this diagram or this figure, as you can see, users and other programs is situated on top. Okay, and then as you can see, the one colored in the blue, a light blue or sky blue, is actually the components of the operating system. Okay, so it is divided into services, system calls, and a user interface. So the user or other, normally we will call the users is the application programs, right? The programs, how to interact with the operating system, they will have to go through the user interface. Okay, so the user interface, the responsible of the user interface, they will use the system calls to communicate with the services within the operating system. You can imagine the system call as the communication channel. And you can imagine the user interface is one of the representative of the operating system. Let's say you are going to a company, for example, a Toyota. Then you speak to one of its employee or staff. So we can say that the staff is actually a user interface. represent the company Toyota, for example. So if you need some services, for example, you need the insurance of your car, for example. So you will talk to the representative, and the representative will come and get it for you. You can imagine that is a situation of how the user interface, okay, takes the request from the user or other system program, and then using system call, okay, to proceed with the task or the request to the operating system as part of the services. Okay, so this is how it is designed, the user interface. Okay, going to the first one, command line interface. So this is the old one, okay, but still used until today, which is you interact with your OS or software by only typing commands to perform specific task. Okay, so we will do this in the lab session also, okay, where you will use the command line interface, and then you will try to differentiate between the CLI and the GUI. Okay, so a command line interpreter then receive, analyze, and execute the requested command. So the command can be many types or according to its own syntax. And then for Unix or Linux, we have the C shell, bash shell. Okay, and then for Windows, of course, we have MS-DOS. Is one of the example of the program that use CLI. For example, so when we open our MS-DOS program, you will see a line prompt. Okay, normally it will write as C, the one that you shown here, C drive something. Okay, that is the root of MS-DOS command for Windows, right? And then when you go for a Linux, which you will also try this in the lab session, so we will have something like a $sign. Okay, so that is actually that you are going to use, right? So unlike a GUI operating system, a command line only uses a keyboard to navigate by entering commands and does not utilize a mouse. If you remember, during the previous generation of computers, okay, before fourth generation, there is no such thing as a mouse. So everything is only keyboard. So this is why before the emergence of GUI, before that, normally people uses operating system via command line interface. Okay, but as the GUI is getting more and more popular, so normally people today or nowadays will prefer GUI rather than CLI. But CLI is still it's not obsolete. It is still being used in certain areas or certain field of study or certain computing task. So for example, like a network. So a network or a programming normally will use a command line because it is much more suitable for that kind of purposes. Right? So we cannot just kick out the CLI. So we need to know that both CLI and GUI is used today as part of the user interface. Okay, but GUI is much more preferable, or users much more prefer GUI because the learning curve is much more easier than CLI. CLI normally users would have to learn some syntax, some commands, have to memorize them. Okay, but when you are doing it often, okay, for example, you use the command the same thing every day and without stop at your job or your task, actually sooner or later you might prefer the CLI more than the GUI. Okay, all right, so this is an example of Linux and Windows in terms of CLI. As you can see, the on the right hand side is actually the task that is the description task. Okay, and then when you look at the left hand side is actually the examples of command that you need to type in in order for you to perform the task. So as you can see in Linux or Windows, okay, some of the commands are actually quite similar, but some of the time, sometime also the command is different. Okay, and this in the lab session you will try to use this command. Okay, so in the previous semester, normally this one will come out as a question in the final assessment or final exam. All right, so that's why this one is really much important, that you need to understand, and you can differentiate between this is the Windows or this is the Linux. All right, so command language. All right, so command language is scripting. Okay, if you want to combine more than one command, that's all about what we call as a command language, a batch. Right, so batch means you do something, okay, in a group. Okay, so this one is a feature, the greatest feature of command line interface, because command line interface, it can actually combine the commands together. So those things are not available in GUI. Okay, so this is an example of command line interface in Windows 7. Okay, so you go to your search, you type cmd.exe, and then it will come out as like this. Okay, so this is actually one of the example of command line interface in Windows 7. So in Linux, okay, like this one. Okay, but we are going to this is why we learn the virtual machine. Okay, because we are trying to do the CLI and GUI within each operating system. Okay, so what is the advantage of command line interface? Okay, so as you can see here, these are the advantage when you are using command line interface. We discuss one by one. The first one, faster than using menus or icons on a GUI interface. Yes. Okay, so CLI is actually faster. Okay, if GUI, then you will have to find where is the menu. Okay, where is the icons. For example, if you are using Microsoft Word, some of the menu is embedded in one menu or in deeply. Okay, some menus are hidden in another menu, for example. Okay, so that is making you much more slower than the CLI. All right, for example. Okay, and then less memory required because no graphics on the interface. Of course, the advantage of CLI is actually you are not involving any graphics. You don't need to load an icon, a graphic, background wallpaper or whatsoever. So you just use a text. So that is less memory, faster performance. Okay, and then it works on computers with limited hardware and software. Again, some computers are not very have good features or good specs. So CLI is better on this kind of computers. Okay, so experienced user can use this system faster than others. This is how I mentioned just now. Okay, CLI in the beginning might be difficult because of the learning curve, but once you get used to it, you will definitely want to use the CLI rather than GUI. Okay, the complex command can be entered to customize the operating system for a particular users. Okay, so this is also quite possible in CLI, so does not require a window operating system. Okay, so that is the last one. Now, disadvantage. Okay, people with limited knowledge of DOS may find the interface confusing and hard to use. I think this applies to all of us. Okay, I think this applies to all of us because we grown up with GUI. Okay, we are very used to graphical user interface. It doesn't matter Windows, Android, okay, the iOS, we are very it is a norm to us to use graphical user interface. So in this course, right, in the lab session, so this is a new norm for you trying to use the CLI. So errors in a command can cause the operation to fail and can be very time consuming. So if with CLI, if you are having an error, okay, you might find that some errors are very annoying. Okay, you might have unlimited looping, or the statement will execute without stop. Okay, for example. All right, and then the third one, any errors in typing will require the user to retype the command. Okay, this is rather time consuming and frustrating. Okay, so normally the CLI you will have to go step by step. So if one of the step is having incorrect, then you will have to do the step from the first step again, for example. Okay, so commands have to be learned, especially in Unix where there are hundreds of them. Okay, for Linux, for example, quite a lot of commands, so you have to learn and memorize. So the interface is not interactive, this is logic. Okay, why it is not very popular among us? Because of the interface is not attractive. Okay, not only human, the interface of the computer also need to be attractive, right? Now GUI, most like Windows and Mac provide a GUI, lets you control the system by using a mouse to click graphical objects on the screen. So now that is the main point of graphical user interface. So you can use your trackball, your mouse, or even your touch screen to control the system. Okay, so and then in the graphical user interface also, most of the text are actually, or the devices can be represented by a symbol or an icon. Okay, so for example, in operating system, a disk would be a symbol of CD-ROM, for example. Okay, so a gear might be a symbol for settings. Okay, a lightning may be a symbol of battery or power. Okay, that is the elements of graphical user interface. Okay, so the fourth statement, this one is specific for Windows. Okay, so Windows, we have two unique tools, what we call as the taskbar. So taskbar is actually the one that have your start button. Okay, so the start button will click, the start button will actually show the user what kind of the what is actually the program or the application installed. So that is specific for Windows only. For Mac is the Finder. Okay, the Finder. Normally the taskbar for the Windows will be default is bottom. Okay, but normally for Mac OS it will be on top. Okay, so in a GUI, each program opens and runs in separate window, a frame that represents the program and its documents. So window means, okay, this is why how the Windows got its name. Okay, so when you open two applications, so two applications will appear as two separate boxes. So these boxes is actually what we call as the windows. All right. So in a GUI, you can run multiple programs at once in each and a separate window. Okay, the application in use is said to be the active window. Right? So you are now, okay, for example, if you're watching this on YouTube, okay, so your YouTube is actually on your Google Chrome or your browsers. So your browser is now the one that you are actually focusing. So this window for your browser is actually what we call as the active window. Okay, so next, GUI based program let you issue command by choosing them from menu. So again, the difference between GUI and CLI. So CLI, you have to remember the command. So GUI, no need. The commands are there for you. Okay, in terms of list of command, okay, list of menu, the only thing that you need to do is actually to find those. All right. So a menu group contains command, for example, file menu, open. Okay, so this is quite consistent at every program. Okay, so when you open Microsoft Word, when you go to file, okay, you can see save as, print, and everything. When you go to another, for example, Microsoft Excel or Adobe PDF, when you go click the file menu, and then you can see save as, you can see print. So most of the Windows have what we call as the consistency, okay, related commands. Some commands are related to make sure that users can actually find them. Okay, so again, the statement number 4, menus lets you avoid memorizing and typing command names. So this is the advantage of GUI over CLI. So the learning curve is, okay, less than CLI, right? The last statement, again, as I said, some of the program can be having the same design of graphical user interface. So when you open Office application, most of them looks the same. Not most of them, all of them will look the same. Okay, you open Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft PowerPoint. As you can see, everything is designed the same. The difference is only the color and the menu. Okay, and how what are you going to do with the software? The rest, they have done it very consistent. The design is quite consistent, similar from one another. So Microsoft Word, you will see blue color, and then for PowerPoint you will see orange color. So for Excel you will see green, and then for OneNote you will see purple, for example. Okay, so this is menu, right? Okay, so a dialog box. Okay, in GUI we have something called a dialog box. Okay, special window that appears when the program of the OS needs more information before completing a task. Okay, a very simple explanation for this one is to print. So when you click print, you will be having another pop-up window will come out, will ask you, okay, how many copy that you want to print, and then what color and whatsoever. So we can say that dialog boxes are so named because they conduct a dialogue with the user, asking user to provide more information or make choices. So before this, when you go to the menu, you click print. But of course, you need more than that information. What do you want? What do you want to print? What color? How many copy? Okay. Do you want it front and back? Do you want multiple pages in one paper? Do you want the margins to be this like this? Okay. So that is what we call as a dialog box, right? Now this is a very old operating system. Okay, but as you can see here, this is an example of graphical user interface. Okay, so GUI versus CLI, this is actually the comparison in terms of the category on the left hand side. Okay, so as you can see, this is actually a summary, right? You can actually because the question in final assessment will ask you on the difference between, for example, please briefly explain the examples between the difference between CLI and GUI in terms of multitasking, for example. Okay, or differentiate between GUI and CLI in terms of speed. Okay, so you will have to explain, okay, according to the CLI or GUI. All right, so most of the statements here are actually have been explained just now, right? Okay, this is just to show you side from the GUI and CLI side by side, okay, to show that which one is better in certain categories. For example, ease of use, of course, which one? Okay, GUI is better because the learning curve is again it's not as hard as CLI, right? So for control, the CLI will win, okay, because most of the operating system, to access the internals of the operating system itself, user to have to use command line interface, right? Okay, but in terms of multitasking, all right, multitasking, GUI again will be the winner. Okay, because GUI have windows and users can view, manipulate all the things at once, so easier by using GUI. And then for appearance, okay, of course, in terms of this one, is that any winner? Okay, normally for appearance would be GUI, because there are more people can look at it and get more the appearance is much more attractive to users compared to CLI, because CLI will have the same uniform interface, and sometimes it might be quite boring to the users, right? For speed, okay, it depends. Okay? Some of the tasks is better to be is much faster in CLI, but some of the tasks is much better in GUI. And then resources. Okay, normally the CLI will have less resources because it is not graphical intensive compared to GUI. GUI, you have to have all the graphical elements, okay, to support the interface. Okay, so it will have a lot more resources to be used rather than command line interface. For scripting, of course, CLI will win. Okay, because scripting is very friendly for command line interface. Okay, what is scripting is like the batch that I have explained before this. Actually you combine a lot of commands into one batch, so you execute them together in one go, for example. So that is what we call a scripting. So this one is very suitable for CLI, not suitable for GUI. Okay, remote access again. All right, the original one, okay, the CLI, originally CLI is used for remote access, but now a lot of company have gone or software developer have developed a software with remote access with graphical user interface. Okay, so the comparison again is summarized here. Now I think this is the last one. All right, so the last interface that is getting much more popular nowadays is what we call as the voice activated interface. Okay, it uses natural language, so no longer uses mouse or keyboard. All right, so recognize natural language processing, which means speaking language or spoken language. So uses voice recognition, voice data entry, and voice response. Keyboard, pointing devices, and microphones are the primary input. Okay, and devices provide audio input, output. Okay, it can be observed in multimedia application and online games. So that is the voice activated interface. That's all. Thank you very much.